I realized that I haven't shown this to you before, and since I seem to be going through like my list of different Star Trek things I own, this is my Star Trek The Next Generation Technical Manual. I got this like, I got it a long time ago because I was at this antique show here in Columbus with my sister and my aunt, and it was so much stuff. So we were walking through it, one of the booths in the middle, I saw this. I was like, oh my god, like I have to see how much this costs. And so like on the front, yeah, it's $14 in the US on the front, and I probably wouldn't have paid that, but I asked him how much it is, and it was only $3, because it's like a little price in here, so I bought it. And there is so much information here. It is ridiculous, like, the amount of time that someone had to go into this. Like, this is best case atmospheric entry for the saucer section. It's like little sketches and diagrams. I don't know, well, I don't actually know what that is. There's like flow charts. These are sensor arrays for the Enterprise. And it's like so much stuff. And like when I was younger, I read a lot of this. I didn't actually read the whole thing. Sometimes I would just like flip through it and read different stuff. But like there's so much information here. This is about phasers. And they have like stuff about like the different like stations on the bridge with like the engineering, the science stations. I don't even know when, wait. Yeah, this was written in 91, so it came out like right after the series started, like a few years after it started. And it has like an introduction by Gene Roddenberry, and it's actually like really cool. Like I would just like sit and read this. There's actually a quote by Robert F. Kennedy here. I don't know why. I never actually read this before. It says, "Some men see things the way they are and say why. I dream things that never were and say why not." Which I've actually heard before, but I didn't know that was Robert Kennedy. But if you guys are ever, like, bored or want to know a lot about Star Trek, I would definitely recommend you guys seeing if you can get your hands on a copy of this. Because it's, I don't know, it's like the nerdiest thing that you can find. Because it's written from, like, an in-universe perspective, is the thing. It's not even, I mean, there's a few, like, notes and italics about the show, but the entire thing, like, even have, like, history and stuff. It's written like this really happens. It makes it so much cooler.
Engage.
Hi guys, today's episode I'm doing episode 9, it's the battle, and this episode is really focused on Picard. It starts out with the Enterprise rendezvousing with this Ferengi ship that they've been flying alongside this ship for 3 days, and the Ferengis are just now making contact. So the Ferengis beam over and they tell Picard that they have a present for him. So they've had on their sensors that this Constellation class starship from the Federation was coming up on them. When they put it on the viewer, they realize that it's Picard's old ship, the Stargazer. And we find out that 9 years ago, Picard was attacked when he was captain of the Stargazer. He was attacked by this unknown vessel. He defeated the enemy, but he had to abandon ship and just go away in like shuttlecrafts and escape pods. And the Ferengi tells him that ship that Picard destroyed was a Ferengi vessel, but this was before the Federation had any contact with the Ferengi, so they didn't know that at the time. So the Ferengi captain, he gives Picard the Stargazer, and we don't really know how he found it, or like what connection he has with that battle 9 years ago. We just know he gives it to Picard. Meanwhile, Picard has been having these really bad headaches, and they don't know what's causing it, because apparently in the future people don't have headaches. So when he goes over to the Stargazer to check it out, he's going through his trunk of belongings, and you can see there's this weird glowing sphere inside. Picard doesn't see it, but we can see it. And then it turns out that the Ferengi captain has another identical, it's like a really like weird like metal red kind of pinkish rose colored glowing sphere. And the Ferengi also has one. He's doing something to it and causing Picard to have these awful headaches. The episode is actually not much happens. It's kind of slow, but by the time you get to the end, Picard is practically reliving this old battle. So he goes over to the Stargazer. The Ferengi captain meets him there. He tells Picard that 9 years ago, when Picard destroyed that ship, the Ferengi's son was the captain of that ship, and Picard killed his son. For the last 9 years, this Ferengi has been trying to find a way to seek revenge. And this he thinks is the perfect revenge, like fooling Picard, like driving him crazy with this device into thinking that he is reliving this battle and have him destroy the Enterprise using this thing called a Picard maneuver that apparently no one can beat. So he sets Picard up on the ship. He goes back to his ship, and Picard is going to attack the Enterprise, and it ends with Riker hailing him and getting through to him that you're crazy, you need to look for this little glowing sphere and destroy it. So really, it is a really kind of slow episode, because not that much happens. The majority of the episode is just Picard kind of having headaches and going crazy, and the rest of the crew trying to figure out what's wrong with him. And also, one more thing I forgot to mention is when they go over the Stargazer, Data is analyzing like the logs and the computer entries from the Stargazer, and it has a log in Picard's voice, kind of like an admission of guilt, saying that he fired on the Ferengi vessel first because he thought that they were going to attack. So it was kind of saying like Picard fired on an unarmed vessel who came in peace, and that it was really his fault. He should have been punished for this instead of kind of like being a hero, and that he saved his crew. But they find out that that log is falsified. But it's them just trying to figure out what's going on the entire episode. What I like about this episode is that we actually do get to see some of Picard's past. Because previously, we don't really know a lot about Picard. I mean, at this point, we are only, 9 episodes in, so we don't know a lot about any of the crew. We had, like, our Tasha episode. We know a little bit about, like, some of the other characters. But for the most part, we don't know anything about the past of many of the characters. Like, Data, we don't know where he came from. We don't know a lot about, like, Worf. And Picard is one that I feel like we should know a lot about at this point because he's the captain. So this episode is cool because it's the first episode that really talks about his past commands, his just kind of just like what he's gone through in his life, because he is the captain of the Federation's flagship. So he obviously has a lot of experience. He's also obviously been through a lot. And this is cool because it just kind of shows one of the things that he's kind of well known for. Because he was being attacked by this completely like unknown ship, and he managed to save his crew. The Picard maneuver, what he did, it was apparently really brilliant. He was over here, he went into warp 9 really fast, like zipped up on the enemy ship, and then immediately fired phasers and torpedoes so that for a second it looked like there were 2 ships and they didn't know which one to fire on. And that's the thing that there's no defense about. Again, there's no defense against. But I don't know how that would have apparently like destroyed the Enterprise, because that was the Ferengi's plan. Apparently that would have destroyed the Enterprise, even though I feel like that wouldn't really have happened. But anyway, I got off track. But basically Picard saved the crew, and he's really well known for this apparently brilliant like maneuver at the helm. So that's just one of the things that he's well known for. And it's also in this episode you kind of get to see how he reacts to like the different pressure. We actually see him almost starting to crack a little bit. Like, yeah, he is under this weird, like, he's under the control of this weird like, thought device, mind probe thing. But it is one of the first times that we kind of get to see, like, a little, like, chip in his stoic, really, like, austere, calm thing that he has going on. But we also get to see, like, in the last episode, Justice, we also kind of got to see something like that, where he wasn't really sure what to do with, like, saving Wesley or breaking the Prime Directive. And it's just kind of interesting, because, like, we actually do get to see his more human side in these episodes, which I like a lot. Another thing that's cool is that they flesh out the Ferengi more in this episode. The Ferengi don't really come back a lot in The Next Generation. Like I said, they are more in Deep Space Nine. If you guys have seen that, I know that has more just Ferengi main characters in it. Whereas in Next Generation, they just kind of pop up every once in a while. They are villains in that they pretty much are entirely, like, unscrupulous, and they don't like the Federation. They are entirely in it for profit. But they're not villains to the point where the Enterprise is ever that threatened by them. It says at the beginning that they are technologically equivalent to the Federation, but honestly it seems like they have no idea what's going on. So they don't really come back much. But this episode, before they kind of get rid of them, it's cool because they actually are trying to do more with the Ferengi, as opposed to the Last Outpost where they were just insane. Because this one, the daemon of the Ferengi is entirely like set on revenge, and he has no morals about it at all besides just avenging his son. But his second in command, at least he has an honor system based on profit, because when he finds out what his captain has done and how he gave the Stargazer to Picard as opposed to selling it like the first officer wanted, and then he got caught up in this big revenge thing. So the first officer the Ferengi, he ends up relieving his captain of command. The reason is that he engaged in an unprofitable venture, but it shows that at least the Ferengi do have some sort of honor system, even if it is just entirely based on profit and they don't have anything else really guiding them. Like, at least they have that, which is something. And it is a little bit something more than we saw in the last Outpost. That's pretty much it for this episode. I like the fact that with the altered log, with Picard's altered log, when Data tells Riker about it, Riker immediately goes to Picard, tells him about it, says, we assume it's fake, we're trying to figure out why. Picard tells him he still has to report it. But it's neat because, like, at no point is there any thought of, oh my god, maybe Picard did fire on an unarmed vessel that came in peace. Like, Riker implicitly trusts Picard, and whenever Dr. Crusher, like Deanna Troi hear about it, they're in that same mindset. None of them doubt Picard for an instant. And it's just kind of cool, like, you seeing the crew melding that fast. I mean, we are 9 episodes in. I don't know how long that corresponds in terms of, like, how long they've actually been on the Enterprise together, but it's kind of neat, like, seeing the crew all come together like this. That is really it for this episode. Like I said, not a lot happened. It's not boring exactly, because it is a fun episode to watch, and that you actually, I feel like I say that about all of them, but they are just, like, exciting to watch. But, I mean, it's enjoyable to watch, but talking about it, there's really not that much to say, because it's not even a mystery that much. It's just Picard's slow descent into semi-insanity until he gets better. So, I mean, it's a decent episode. I hadn't seen this episode in a long time. I don't even remember it that much. I think it was one of just a random episode that I wasn't really paying attention during or something when I saw whenever I was younger. So I really didn't remember much of it. I remembered it being kind of bad, but, I mean, I enjoyed it this time. So, yeah, that's basically it. Thanks for watching. So I was originally going to have an outro of me dancing because I was having a one-person dance party and then I just decided to film it. But after reviewing the clips, I realized that my dancing was so horrible that there was no way I could ever release it onto the internet or inflict it on anyone else. So this is just my outro now.